Coogs House. The Houston Cougars are up for another big end of season award. Plus, we got to talk to a DJ getting the ones and twos and also a nurse.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Angels, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who can step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. We can the latest on the Cougs in your news feed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's good to see you again. Remember, when we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're going to be giving something away because we're giving something away every 250 subscribers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and then like and comment on the video to let us know that you are entered in the contest. If after listening to us talk some about some award nominations and talking to a DJ/nurse, and you have nothing else to say, I guess, you can tell us if you think butter is a condiment. Now, in today's episode, I want to spend the first part talking a little bit more serious and nitty-gritty because there was a fairly monumental award announcement on Monday. And then in the second and third segments, we're going to talk some to the DJ, the nurse DJ. Now, admittedly, it's a fun segment. It's a lot of fun fandom stuff. I found this guy online. I'll introduce that more in a second. But that'll take up the second and third segments of the show today. So first, before we get to the fun stuff, let's talk a little bit about the big award that got announced on Monday. The NCAA recognized or told us the 4 finalists for the Naismith Coach of the Year award in both men's and women's basketball. In women's basketball, it was Kenny Brooks of Virginia Tech, Terry Morin of Indiana, Lynn Roberts of Utah, and Dawn Staley of South Carolina. But the notable thing for this show is on the men's side. You had Matt Painter of Purdue, Shaka Smart of Marquette, Jerome Tang of Kansas State, and yes, our own beloved Kelvin Sampson is one of the 4 finalists for the Naismith Coach of the Year award. Worth noting in this 4 finalists. Now, he had obviously been mentioned in like 20 finalists earlier, whatever, so we knew this is a possibility. But of the 4 people left, Matt Painter of Purdue got dipped in the first round. Shaka Smart of Marquette also got dipped in the second round. So neither one of those guys made it out of the first weekend of the March Madness tournament. Both obviously had fairly strong runs throughout the rest of the season. Purdue was number 1 for various stretches of the season. Shaka Smart and Marquette, they won the Big East. The Big East has 3 teams in the Sweet 16, so clearly it was a strong conference, right? So I don't mean to diminish those 2 guys, and this is not just the show where I'm going to like poo-poo on them a whole lot, but worth pointing out, like, they are not having the same success that Sampson and Tang are at least having at this point. I also think that we're going to lean into Kelvin Sampson more in a second, and I think he is the runaway candidate in a lot of ways in this. However, to be fair to Jerome Tang, he has a very fun personality. He's really flipped that Kansas State program back around really quickly, and I think the biggest thing working in his favor is the speed with which he did it, with getting Kansas State to where they are now. They were picked to be dead last in the Big 12, and they're one of, 2 teams from the Big 12 in the Sweet 16. I guess you don't count Houston that quite yet, right? And so I get his case. So while I would put Kelvin over Painter and Smart and personally put him over Jerome Tang, I at least understand the argument behind Jerome Tang. It's just not one I would lean into. I think what Kelvin has done at Houston is more impressive than what Tang did very quickly at Kansas State. But as we've seen, Sampson, this is not a 1-year flash in the pan kind of thing. I think there's something about that potentially with what Tang's done. Even if this is a 1-year award, I think that needs to merit some weight here. And then I think the other thing about Kelvin Sampson is there's a different pressure when you're in the top 5 all year long. And Kelvin Sampson has had the Houston Cougars in the top 5 all year long. They never fell below that 5th spot. Now, some of this does involve the week they lost to Alabama, a couple other teams lost. The week they lost to Temple, a couple other teams. Sure, I guess I can see you commenting in the hating down below. That's fine. But it does require coaching a high-level basketball team to be in the top 5 all year long and to continue to work with that pressure of the target on your back every single night of the season. There was no warming up to Houston. They were on all of your magazine covers, all of your ESPN previews, all those things all year long before the season even started, and they continue to chip away and be the number 1 team in the country for large stretches of the season, the number 2, number 1 seed for whatever that's worth. And we're hoping to continue to win and get to play back in Houston at the end of March and early April. All right. All of that said, that's not the only thing I think that builds Kelvin Sampson's resume here as far as winning this award. Houston went 33-3 this season. That's tremendous. You also pointed they went 32-6 last season, got to the Elite Eight. They went to 28-4 the season before, got to the Final Four. So again, I think that longevity of dominance has to carry some weight in this. He's won the American Athletic Conference Coach of the Year for the last 6 years, including this season. He hit career number 700 this year. So again, at a longevity standpoint, this is his 4th straight Sweet 16. Then there's also something about like the program he's built and some sort of recognition as far as like the program he's turned Houston into. Houston was kind of in the doldrums there for a second, and he has turned this into a program that is like the prized possession of the city of Houston, a lot of best basketball team in town, but also like it is the model for building up a program quickly in a 9-year span. It's become, he literally put money in and got the investment started with the flipping of the Hofheinz arena from Hofheinz into the Fertitta Center, got that from the ground level. He was involved in getting the Jordan sneaker deal, right? Like he's involved in so many aspects of building the University of Houston's program that like you kind of forget that he also coaches the basketball side of it, like the product on the floor. As a whole, again, I see arguments across the board. I do feel like Sampson has to be a favorite here, given the finalists left. Other guys I think might have more shock value, not shock value, but shock value if they were to get this thing. But to me, there's something about continuing to play with that bullseye on your chest and wearing it proudly all season long. And Sampson never backed down from that. I also think that just statistically, not analytically looking at the way Houston plays, when you look at that, they constantly play better in the second half. They win, they go 33-3 and are a better second half team across the games. That indicates coaching is happening at halftime in a way that I think is worth pointing out. They also win games defensively. They don't they have Jarris Walker, they have Marcus Sasser, they have Jamal Shed, they have all these talented basketball players, but it's a system and a program and a culture, and that starts somewhere. That somewhere is Kelvin Sampson. And that's why I think those are easy enough, pinpoint, that's obvious, that he has created over a long period of time that are clearly long lasting, that I give him the nudge here, and I don't think it's particularly has to be a hard nudge. I think he's got this. We will see in a couple weeks, but in a moment, I want to talk some to a guy that gets to ask him questions fairly often. We'll get more into that in a second, but first, let's talk about our friends at FanDuel, because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and the tournament is heating up. Well, it's the perfect time to download FanDuel because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you bet on everything from money line to point scores to threes drained. They have posted the betting lines for Houston, Miami, and the Sweet 16 this weekend. Houston is favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is set at 137.5. I am taking the over, but I was close. Remember, we talked in yesterday's episode briefly, and we'll talk more later this week. Miami plays really, really fast, right? And so you have to think that they play really, really fast. They will probably continue to play really, really fast, right? I am taking Houston with 6.5 points. I don't think it'll be a very big game. I don't know if it gets double digits, but 6.5 points to me means it's 5 or 6 points, and then you play the foul free throw game down the stretch, right? we'll get into more analysis of that game throughout the week. But on the whole, I do feel like Houston wins this game. Maybe not by 15 points like they beat Auburn by 17, but I do think they win this game, and I think they win it by more than 6.5 because those free throws in the stretch. And I think that you should go place some bets on those things at FanDuel, because FanDuel lets you combine your bets for an even bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so admittedly, before we get into this guest, we're going to bring the DJ Nurse DJ on in a second. But this was crazy because I saw the picture on the No Context College Basketball tweet, and I was like, oh my God, I got to meet this guy. Very quickly got connected with him on Twitter, and kind of has a crazy story. Now, heads up, we talked very, very last minute, and so we didn't necessarily have a whole lot of time to like find his stats and stuff like that. I think he misspoke once or twice on like the points difference and various points in the Auburn game. And I think he had like the Duke Miami game being a final, one as a semifinal, whatever. But that's not the point here. The point here is the kind of a cool, crazy story of a guy that is very, very helpful in the Houston community as a nurse that helps save lives and like change lives, and is also a big time Cougs fan and follows them around the country playing basketball. You know what? I've talked enough about it. Let's jump into it. All right, and now we are joined by the Nurse DJ. You might have seen him on the internet this weekend. Nurse DJ, first, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, DJing by night, nurse by day. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of room for sleep there. How you doing today?
You're right. In fact, when I go to games, people frequently see me drinking coffee, and they're like, "Why are you drinking coffee at 7 p.m.?" It's like, you don't know my lifestyle. I need it. My veins, please.
So tell us about this balance you've got of being a nurse and a DJ. That's not a normal combination.
No, it's not. But also the caveat there is that before I was a nurse, I actually worked full-time in the music industry. And I'll say that nursing school was the most difficult thing I did academically. And as soon as I passed my boards, I knew I immediately wanted to get back in. And so, that's how I adopted the moniker DJ Nursic, the nurse DJ. It was a portmanteau of both nursing and music, the two biggest things in my life right now.
So tell us about, outside of the fact that they're a fun team to root for, did you go to U of H? The Cougs?
Technically. And so here's a lot of people will remember me or will know me as a sign guy. I always try to bring a different sign that usually, either the season ticket holders will see or sometimes national TV will see. And the very first sign I ever made was Tulane grad, but a Cougs fan. Why is that? So I technically have a Tulane degree, yes. But U of H got me across the finish line. My final 20 credits for my bachelor's was from U of H. And that's why I feel a much stronger allegiance to University of Houston.
Well, I think that's the right way to go about it. And also getting across the finish line is important, right?
Yeah. Hugely important.
So I take it then, did you write this? I'm trying to pull it back up. I just saw it. The sign over the weekend was it starts in Houston, ends in Houston, something to that extent.
Yeah, so the sign was the road starts and matter of fact, I think I have it right. Yeah, here we go.
Perfect. Yeah, the road starts and ends with Houston. There you go.
That's us as well, right? That's the big hope.
All right, so I'm going. I admittedly in pre-pod had these out of order, but now I got to ask. In taking the signs and go, you went to Birmingham, Alabama over the weekend. Let's go with on the court highs and lows. It's gonna be a high and a low from the trip to Birmingham over the weekend.
I would say that the low was certainly the lackluster performance we had over Northern Kentucky. Now the classic Coach Valvano quote is "A win's a win and a loss is a loss," but man, there were certainly wasn't a commanding, kind of like talking about Tulane when we hosted Tulane. The spread was 15 points, and we doubled it, and we beat Tulane by 30. And especially on how hot Auburn was against Iowa, I was nervous about Saturday. So nervous.
So then there were highs, though. What were the highs?
Oh, the highs were the wins, right? Survive, dance. But I would also say on a larger level, I mean, to be polite with Birmingham, they were very nice, but Birmingham's not on the top of the list on places to visit. And so I was impressed with how many Houston fans made it out there. Because I have a hard time believing that there was a huge Houston fan base in Birmingham, but there was certainly some very loud. And I mean, these trips are always a great time to reconnect with friends and fellow fans, and meet other ones. I mean, I met so many great people, and a lot of them are going to Kansas City. So it's just like, come on, let's go.
Let's go. Did you do anything fun in the town of Birmingham? I mean, obviously saw 2 very fun basketball games, but was there anything fun happening in that city?
Yeah, so Coogs on the Road does a great job of doing alumni events before the game. They coordinated the alumni shot of things that we lucked in on. There was a parade, a St. Patty's Day parade on that Saturday. So there were people having beads around their neck. And but Birmingham was a nice city. It was really neat.
I have to say, like, I didn't go to the bowl game there a couple years ago either. I don't know much about Birmingham. I had a history teacher though, and so I'm jealous of getting through there. Kansas City this weekend. Intuitively, I'd at least be more excited about the food in Kansas City. What are you looking forward to outside of a couple of Cougar wins in Kansas City?
So, you brought up history. I love museums, and I've been to Kansas City a handful of times. One of the best museums I've ever gone to, and especially your sports lovers, the Negro League Baseball Museum. Absolutely phenomenal. There is a jazz museum in Kansas City. I still like the Negro League Museum a lot more. And the one museum I haven't been to, but I've heard a lot of people say great things, is actually the World War I Museum. And I actually think the only World War I museum in the United States is in Kansas City. Someone told me that, so, not necessarily fact, but that is on my list of places to go because I simply haven't been there. And I used to live in New Orleans, right? I went to Tulane, and the World War II Museum was phenomenal. So I definitely want to see the World War I Museum.
Gotcha. Again, like there's 2 fun basketball games potentially scheduled, right? Friday, and we hope for Sunday. But that's also a lot of downtime, right? So, yeah. Interesting. In comparing, I'm not going to actually compare Kansas City barbecue and Texas barbecue, but I am a big food guy too. Is there a type of food? Having been now to Birmingham and said you've been to Kansas City a couple times, is there some like place, if a listener is listening to this and they're going to go to Kansas City over the weekend, there's somewhere they got to go that you're like, oh, trust me, that's the best place, Kansas City?
It's really interesting you say that because I would by no means call myself a Kansas City foodie. I am not a subject matter expert there. I am for a lot of other things, but not for Kansas City. But there was someone I met who he actually works a fair bit in Kansas City, and he was talking about how one of the best restaurants he's been there, I think it's a barbecue place. It's called like Oklahoma Joe's. And I was like, why is there a place called Oklahoma Joe's in Kansas City? And so, I don't know if that's actually the name, but I'm going to be texting him and be like, hey, so where's this Joe's place at?
Right. I guess Oklahoma Joe's is probably closer than like, I don't know, Alaska Joe's would be.
Right? I mean, we're about to find out.
One restaurant you do frequent, though, it must be the Acme Oyster House because you are a regular, it sounds like, and you go ask Kelvin Sampson questions at his local radio show every week. As we're recording this on a Monday afternoon, I'm sure you're actually, frankly, headed there soon, right?
Normally I would be, but actually the last show was this past Monday. He does not do the show during March Madness, and rightfully so because every minute counts. Using that same sign. So there's actually a sign shortage nationwide.
Did not know this.
So I'm very happy I've saved all my signs because I've actually had to start using the backs of my signs. That's how hard it's been. So on the back of the sign I showed you was actually a sign I made for the very last Acme show, not this season, but last season. One of the threads that Sampson kept coming back to was that his staff doesn't get nearly the credit they deserve. Like John Houston, he's the head for sports medicine for Houston, and all the other guys. So I ended up creating a sign for them. And
Acme,
exactly.
Acme, all staff, coaching team members to excellence. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. He was trying to give it as a gift to Sampson. He ended up just signing it, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I'll hold it now."
Yeah, that may be more valuable that way. Also, that's got to be a really cool keepsake. I didn't realize you were keeping these every week. Like that, you've got a full season worth of signs because you're holding them up at every game.
Exactly, and I always try to change it up every game.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. What I was segueing to, and I should have known that Sampson was going to, not spend an hour talking to people at the Oyster House. First of all, what do you order at the Oyster House? And second of all, is there a question that sticks out maybe about the John Houston or whomever? Is there a question that sticks out in your head that you really enjoyed hearing Sampson's response to?
I got to say that Kelvin Sampson's radio show is probably the most underappreciated entertainment in Houston. It really is. I mean, the fact that Acme Oyster House is not beaming, packed like sardines is just kind of shocking to me. And frankly, it just feels like stand-up comedy whenever he's up there. And he's always good about bringing a different guest. But every time I go, I always make sure to ask a question, whether it's of Coach himself or one of his guests. But of all the questions I asked him, the one that I am the most proud of and just amazed at how viral it went locally, the very final radio show, talking about themes here. Last season, Sampson talked about how his favorite thing during spring break was the shorter lines at McDonald's.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, he talked about how McDonald's is one of his guilty pleasures. So I'm like, McDonald's has been doing all these different celebrity meals, so to speak. So that was my question to Coach. So I was like, hey, Coach, if you love McDonald's, you said this multiple times, what is the Kelvin Sampson meal? And it was the sausage McMuffin with egg. And it just, Twitter and the internet went wild with it. Even the Houston Chronicle, shout out to Joseph Duarte, because Lord knows I wouldn't have written it. Like, this is the breakfast of champions. At McDonald's, it's the sausage McMuffin with egg.
So I appreciate a sausage McMuffin with egg. I'm not gonna lie. Is it your favorite breakfast sandwich ever?
I'm actually more of a McGriddle guy.
Yeah,
I love the hash browns, and so I'm known to order 7 or 8 hash browns and call that my breakfast. So when he said that he didn't like the hash browns and that they were too oily, I kind of died a little on the inside.
Exactly. I'm not. Sampson is a much smarter guy than me when it comes to basketball. He clearly knows how to run a strong program and turn things around very quickly. He's built, this powerhouse, and he's. I might disagree with some of his breakfast takes, I think. After that.
Yeah, and if you look at the comments on Twitter, there's definitely differences of opinion. I mean, even today, someone replied to my tweet is like, "Oh, sausage McMuffin with egg is garbage. Taquito hits better." It's like, it's apples and oranges. Taquito.
The taquito really is a whole different thing.
Change the program. What if, the previous coach, he was not eating the sausage McMuffins with egg, and that was the change? Who knows?
Right. Who knows? Where would we be today if they stopped selling?
It brings a new meaning to cardiac Cougs, right? I mean,
no, actually, adding McDonald's in the mix really. I mean, you're a nurse. You can tell us that really would add a whole different element. On the nursing stuff, you do. So I was gonna ask you, give me the nurse's opinion on some of our injuries, but we have a nagging groin here, some knee soreness there. You do very, very serious things. Can you tell us a little bit about your day job? Your night job is being the DJ and a face of a fun, Cougar fan base. Tell us some about what is it like? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis as a nurse?
So I am triple board certified in medical surgical, spinal cord injury, and healthcare disasters. And depending on what unit I'm working on, it's a very different experience. And full disclosure, I'm right now between jobs. I have accepted a part-time position where I would be in a float pool. So depending on what unit I'm going to, it'd be very different. But I'll say some of the most rewarding experience I've had was in the world of spinal cord injury. And what's great about that specialty is that you have a lot of physicians that are also avid into sports. And, when, especially in football, when you see some of these monster collisions when it comes to like a spinal cord injury, that is right in, my wheelhouse. Because, the spinal cord is interesting in the sense that when you give a proper handoff, the level of injury will very much dictate everything about the patient and what they can and can't do. And I mean, some of the most rewarding things for me, I have seen patients where they've been paralyzed from the neck down and all of a sudden they take their first steps. And being able to be a part of that healing journey is just absolutely rewarding.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, that sounds like a very, very incredible room and situation to be in. And like you said, rewarding sounds exactly that way. And frankly, I almost feel lucky that I don't have to hey, so tell us about this, Houston because the basketball injuries are nowhere near anything to that severity. It's a strained groin, right? It's I think Juwan Roberts got hit in the junk the other day. I don't think anything too serious going on. But man, that is a very, like I said, rewarding profession to be involved in. But I also feel like there's probably some rewarding stuff on the DJ side. So what's the DJ life like?
So the DJ life, I mean, the music I like to play are things no one's ever heard of. I mean, where I first got my taste for DJing was at WTO New Orleans 91.5 FM. And before DJing there, I thought that I knew a lot about music. As soon as I started being involved at that station, I quickly learned I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And so when I came to Houston, I mean, one of the most iconic college stations out there is K-True Rice Radio, 96.1. And so I very quickly, I came back to Houston in July, and come August, all of a sudden I was having a regular show at K-True Rice Radio. And so helping people discover their next favorite artist is one of my favorite things. And some people will remember of certain artists I brought up, but the one artist that comes to mind that I'm just so amazed at her success, because for a very long time, no one really knew about her, Lizzo.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Lizzo's album Lizzo Bangers came out around 2013, 2014, and she was a weirdo speed rapper. I mean, she has this great track about her time at Pants vs. Dress, called Pants vs. Dress, where she's South by Southwest, and she makes all of these Houston references. And then all of a sudden she flipped to pop, and she's this huge superstar. And it's wow, Laserbeak of Doomtree, who I've interviewed before, produced that first record. And here you are just on a whole nother level, mad props to Lizzo.
I had to look it up because I did not remember. That was 2013. How long ago does that feel? That's a long time ago for Lizzo Bangers to be dropping to then the change of the artist and everything. God, that was a throwback. That took me back.
And for a while, it wasn't on streaming services. It was removed circa 2015, and I knew it existed because I had the vinyl record. But I was just trying to explain to these people, no, she started off as a rapper, I swear.
Yeah, and it'll seep into the poppy stuff a little bit. You hear the one she hits a flow in the middle of something. But no, that's a crazy artist. I remember playing that. That's a long time ago. A long time ago. Sorry, in the growth of the artist. And I mean, I'm in my 30s. I mean, to make anyone feel old here. All right, so I want to ask, walking out of here, last question. Obviously, we're predicting a couple big. I assume we're predicting maybe hard fought, but Coug wins this weekend because we're both fans of the team. And I mean, maybe you're more realistic than that, but I think we're both optimistic, at least enough to predict that. What do you know about Miami in this first game? Do you have any ideas as far as what they're going to look like Friday night?
Well, when I think of Miami, I think of how the head coach of Syracuse criticized the program they just bought a bunch of players, and then he quickly had to backtrack what he said. It's a very different Miami team than what Miami historically has been. I mean, when you think of the powerhouses or at least recently of the ACC. It's been Duke, North Carolina. North Carolina didn't even make the tournament this year after being in a championship game last year. And Miami, surprisingly, they look like garbage against Duke in the championship game of the ACC. However, I think because they had that embarrassment, I think they're hungrier than what they would normally be. I still think that Houston by far is a better team. I forget which announcer, but described Houston as the kings of unscripted basketball. And the thing that has been iconic every single time is that we are way more of a second half team than we are a first half. And so when we were down by, 7 or 8 at the half against Auburn, I mean, that didn't make me feel good. Didn't make anyone feel good on the Houston side. But at the same time, we've been down that much before and we've come back to win. And in the case of Auburn, like a 17-point swing? We won by 10 or more. I mean, it was commanding for sure. And so we'll see. I mean, I think a large part of it's going to depend on how many of our fans show up. But at the same time, Coach will always talk about how he's only focused on that first game. But us fans, we can look at all scenarios. And
yeah, we get to.
Obviously, looking at the burnt orange over there and thinking, oh my, I mean, could we potentially have a Houston, Texas showdown? And if so, all right, let's go.
Man, that would be fun. That would be a ton of fun on Sunday. We got to get through Friday first, but
Yes.
You're going up Kansas City. So tell people where they can find you on social media. And frankly, like what to be looking out for. A big sign. Do you know what we're going to say on the sign yet?
So definitely look for a sign, but at the same time, it's going to depend on whether I can get it past security because every venue. Yeah, I mean, when we won on Thursday, I actually was able to get my sign in through there, but on Saturday, they would not. So if people were wondering why I didn't have a sign, it's like, well, security wouldn't let me. I'm sorry. And same thing happened last year when at the Elite Eight and Sweet 16 in San Antonio, I had this giant sign and they're like, yeah, you can't bring it in. The dimensions can't be more than 11 by 17. I'm like, really?
So where can people find you in your social media stuff? Where can people find your DJ work? I don't see any nurse work. It's mostly DJ work online.
Yeah, so my DJ work and music recommendations you can find at DJ NURSIC. I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram. I technically have a Facebook. But yeah, if you follow me, I'll probably follow you back if I see that you're a Cougs fan.
Perfect. So Cougs, be looking out for the nurse DJ in Kansas City. That's at DJ NURSIC on your social media handles. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking Cougs, DJ, nursing, all the above, man. It's been a fun time.
Hey, likewise. Thank you so much for the invite, Parker, and go Cougs!
Go. All right. Thank you all so much. And thank you to the nurse DJ for coming on today. Fun time. He's a fun guy. Go make sure you give him a follow. Check out the DJ show too. He's got some skills in the ones and twos. If you want to follow me and talk to me about Houston Cougar things or about my lack of DJ skills, make sure you find me at Painsworth512, PAINSWRTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your favorite social media handles. We've got a TikTok going on these days. Make sure you can follow me at Painsworth512. Thank you so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On College Basketball. It's March, and that is the show for March Madness. It is a daily college basketball podcast at the national level, very Houston Cougar friendly, too, unlike some other people. It is a great show. Andy and I do a great job. One note on that does kind of tie into Locked On College Basketball. I've mentioned that I gotta kind of take a midweek weekend instead of taking the last weekend. We have to go to a funeral from someone in our family this week, so I got to go to Cleveland for a funeral Wednesday. I'm not sure what'll come out Wednesday, Thursday, time frames on things. Obviously, I'm going to get some sort of a more formal preview out by Friday at the absolute latest. We'll get back to more traditionally scheduled programming here. But I got to get away for a little bit. But while I'm away, we're going to have a bonus episode of Locked On College Basketball. We'll be popping into the feed, too, to talk about the Sweet 16. They'll talk about the Cougs and things like that. So they're going to pop in some. So thank you to Andy and Isaac for that. And thank you to Locked On Podcast Network family for all the things that they do. That is, I guess, our friendly reminder that Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, or in our case, and I'm one team in the country, every day, go Cougs.